Some Pokemon have abilities that don't really make sense on them. I'm not talking about thematically here. Abilities that seem to have very little synergy with the Mon when it comes to its opportunities to take advantage of it. Whether that be because of their move pool, stat distribution, or even their typings. It doesn't really make a ton of sense for the Mons to have these abilities. For this video, I am not going to talk about abilities that are meant to be bad or overshadowed because the Mon has way better options, just ones that have bad synergy due to the Mon's role. So while I could mention things like Iron Fist Ledian not making sense with its 35 base attack, it still benefits this Mon decently since its special attack isn't anything impressive and it does have a lot of moves that become stronger. My first example is No Guard Doublade. Yes, I know it's technically Doublade, but I'm too far gone to pronounce it that way. No Guard is generally one of the better abilities that Mons like Machamp, Golurk, and Mega Pidgeot love to have, spamming high power, low accuracy moves for a guaranteed hit. It is worth the trade-off of all attacks also landing against you, since your opponent likely won't be running many super low accuracy moves themselves. Doublade fails to take advantage of this ability though. Thematically, I get why it has it, but it is forced to run it as its only available ability. Honedge suffers the same fate too. All of the moves Doublade likes to run are already 100% accurate, and it only has a handful of moves that have a chance to miss, none of which are lower than 85% accurate. I don't think you would ever see any of these moves anyways, possibly Toxic or Rock Slide I guess, but typically you have Swords Dance, Shadow Sneak, your fighting coverage, and a Steel Attack. If anything, this just helps your opponents land attacks against you, not worrying about their low accuracy being a factor. The only real usefulness I can imagine is in-game or in formats that allow evasion boosting, since your Doublade will ignore any changes to evasion or its own accuracy being dropped. While No Guard is pretty bad on Doublade, a truly terrible ability is Limber on Stunfisk. This one is actually pretty hilarious though, because whoever added a paralysis immunity ability to a ground electric Pokemon and actually had it approved by others has to be the most charismatic person on the Game Freak squad. Limber obviously will have no effect on Stunfisk, as its natural electric type immunity to paralysis would already kick in. To be fair, this mechanic wasn't introduced until Generation 6, while Stunfisk was introduced in Generation 5, so you could still get paralyzed by moves like Body Slam and Glare, but the fact that to this day it is an option is truly hysterical. And at least if you have your type change, you are still protected from paralysis, so that's cool. Just don't forget to equip your Cherry Berry in the Team Builder. Now Stunfisk's Limber was technically useful when introduced. Rotom-Fan would like to have a word though. Not only was this form shafted by having the weakest exclusive move, but also the only one with a completely useless ability. All the Rotom forms have the ability Levitate. A great ability, especially since Rotom will always carry Electric as its primary type. This benefits all the forms since it's an immunity to ground type moves, along with Spikes and Sticky Web. But for Rotom-Fan, this is useless because it gains the Flying type as its secondary typing. You already have the immunity, so Levitate can only kick in the very rare scenario someone uses Soak on you, or if you're in Generation 9 and you Terrastallize into a non-flying type. But almost always this ability will be useless to Rotom and doesn't synergize with it, considering you could equip an air balloon to it and still be destroyed by 1,000 arrows in Smackdown. Keldeo is a mythical Pokemon and member of the Swords of Justice. These mons all share the ability Justified. This will raise a user's attack stat by 1 stage if hit by a dark type move. Not bad, considering these are all fighting types that can easily swap in on a dark type move. And while this can be great for Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion, it doesn't really synergize onto Keldeo. A look at its base stats tells the tale for this one. 129 base special attack with the rare ability to hit hard and reliably with special fighting stab, or try to go for the Justified boost, to be just another close combat spam mon. Even with a justified boost, Keldeo's attack stat barely eclipses its special attack with no boost. If anything, this ability might hurt Keldeo, as the increased attack would cause more self-inflicted damage from confusion and more damage taken from foul play. The saving grace for this did come with the more recent introduction of Flip Turn, which is a pivoting move Keldeo can choose to run. It's base 60 and physical, so it won't be doing tons of damage, but pivoting sets can run this as a good fourth move, and at least a justified boost would slightly increase your damage output here. While we're on the topic of water types, did you know that the Jellicent line has the ability Damp? Damp is an ability that prevents the use of explosive moves, particularly Explosion, Self-Destruct, and some more recently added bangers like Mind Blown and Misty Explosion. Jellicent running Damp is like talking a random person down from jumping off a bridge. You essentially just save their lives when it wouldn't have affected you much anyways. Kinda wholesome actually. You are immune to Explosion, which is the main move you would block, so instead of just blanking their move and getting rid of their mon, you keep them around to potentially use a different move. Mind Blown is exclusive to Blacephalon and causes it to lose half of its HP, which would be very welcomed considering you would resist it with your water typing and want Blacephalon weaker so it can't have the chance to KO you with its Ghost Stab. So that leaves Misty Explosion, which is another very uncommon move I really only recall seeing on a lead Slurpuff set. So this mostly just doesn't benefit you in a battle setting and can instead be harmful to run. I would mention the benefit of avoiding aftermath damage, but even that doesn't really ever come into play since it is activated when you're KO'd with a contact move. And when's the last time you've seen Jellicent use one of those, eh? The answer is never. It's never. You're not using Waterfall, Facade, Bind, Jellicent. Next, we're going to talk about Metagross. It has the great ability Clear Body, but as a hidden ability, instead of giving it something cool and versatile to juice it up, they gave it the lovely Light Metal. This halves the user's weight. Okay, definitely no Clear Body, but at least you'll switch in better on the moves Low Kick and Grass Knot, right? Wrong. These moves cap out at 120 base power when the target weighs 200 kilograms or more. They are also the only moves that make it beneficial to be lighter against. Metagross weighs a healthy 550 kilograms normally, meaning with light metal, you are still sitting at a thick 225 kgs and taking maximum damage. Meanwhile, we have some other moves called Heavy Slam and Heat Crash, the latter super effective against Metagross, that do more damage when comparing weight. The user's move will be more powerful the heavier they are compared to the target. Light Metal now causes Metagross to potentially take more from these attacks. A lot of heavier Pokemon will now outweigh Metagross to the point of actually boosting the base power of these moves. And you get no benefits in return. Metagross doesn't even get access to a Totemize, which would decrease its weight by 100 kgs per use. In combination with Light Metal, this would actually lessen the power of Low Kick and Grass Knot from 120 to 100 after a use and to 60 after 2 uses. Pro tip though, use the item Float Stone to circumvent this. You half your weight, which takes Metagross's weight to 112.5 kgs after Light Metal, and brings Low Kick and Grass Knot's base power down to 100 at only the cost of your item slot. Trust me, it's a good bring. We're going to look at Pyroar next. It's pretty much a throwback to Keldeo. Pyroar comes with the cool sweeping ability Moxie, which makes sense thematically. King of the Jungle here, taking names and getting attack boost for claiming bodies. But then you check out its base stats. 68 base attack? That can't be right. You give Moxie to a fully evolved Mon with 68 base attack and 109 special attack and expect me to ever want to consider it? This doesn't make any sense at all. They even tempt us by giving Pyroar a way better physical move pool along with 2 other abilities that other Mons normally pass up. This results in Pyroar being pretty much the only Pokemon that uses Unnerve as its main ability. Even max attack Pyroar at +1 from a Moxie boost is still technically weaker than just max special attack Pyroar, making it a real head scratcher to have this ability here. Now here's an ability that almost makes no sense as a whole. This is Stench, essentially King's Rock the ability. Stench will add a 10% flinch chance to attacking moves used by the Stinky Mon. Not a terrible ability, it can have a chance to activate every turn, but most of the users can't practically run it. This isn't just because it is outclassed or bad, but because it doesn't make sense given their stat distribution. Flinching can only be caused if you act before your opponent, so you have to outspeed them. But when you look at almost all the Pokemon with Stench, you see most of them are base 65 speed or lower. Even the fast Stench users, the Stuntank and Garbodor lines, aren't even that fast either, making it pretty difficult to reliably use this ability. It would be great to see at least one Mon receive good synergy with Stench, as it is pretty cool, but on its current roster, it's just not worth running and pretty forgettable. This next one isn't necessarily useless, but has become less and less useful over the gens. This is the ability Overcoat, but more particularly on the grass type users Leavanny and Wormadam. Overcoat has a couple of effects. Its original purpose when introduced in Gen 5 was to protect the user from weather damage, but in Gen 6 it was buffed to also protect from powder and spore moves along with Effect Spore. While this is a nice buff, grass types as a whole received the same buff in Generation 6, making it a bit redundant, don't you think? Well, at least you still gain the weather immunities, right? Those are useful. Thanks to the change from hail to snow in Generation 9, Overcoat makes even less sense to run on these mons, as Sandstorm is now the only weather that does chip damage. So unless you're wanting to keep a Focus Sash intact against a sand team, this ability really does not have any synergy with these two mons. The funny part is, thanks to Wormadam only having Anticipation as another choice, Overcoat might still be its best ability. It's worth mentioning that a lot of the Pokemon who get this ability are immune to Sand Chip too, so they only benefit from the Powder and Spore immunity. At least we have mods like Mandibuzz and Enamorus properly repping this ability. I have the only signature ability on this list next with Mimicry. Mimicry is exclusive to Galarian Stunfisk, and unfortunately fits this theme very, very well. They gave this new Stunfisk form a really good defensive typing, and proceeded to make sure it would remain ass with this ability. Mimicry changes Stunfisk's typing to match the current terrain. This does what for it? Not really anything positive. Stunfisk has, let's see, 0 Psychic type moves for Psychic terrain, 0 Electric type moves, which you would think it would carry over at least something from its base form, 0 Fairy type moves for Misty terrain, but wait, it does get something in Grassy terrain. It has its signature move Snap Trap, 55 base power, and traps the opponent. Pretty much just an accurate Whirlpool and Fire Spin. Wow. Yeah, Stunfisk does get Terrain Pulse, which base power wise becomes decently strong, but it is also a special move, and Stunfisk isn't very well endowed in that department. What even is the point of this ability? And why is it the only choice on this mod? If you face a terrain setter and change your typing, you are just getting worse, since you will even lose your stat bonus on steel and ground type moves. Such a poorly executed concept that could have been really cool with even its own physical signature move that changed type with the terrain. I really do feel bad for this mod. Give it Rough Skin or something as a hidden ability in Gen 10. The ability Hustle is a risky one for sure, but can be a way for borderline Pokemon to find a use with the choice band level of damage boosting it provides at the cost of some accuracy. While this is generally given to mons who prefer physical attacks, they decided to also give it to the Togekiss line in Generation 3, and it even followed up to Togekiss when introduced in next generation. Even without having the amazing Serene Grace ability, this line would not want to use physical attacks boosted by Hustle. The disparity of their attack and special attack is way too massive. Sure, you get that sweet boosted extreme speed that was stab until generation 6, but you're really reaching there and it would still not be very strong and risky to run. To put it into perspective, Togekiss has a lower attack stat than fellow Hustle users Delibird, Rattata, Remoraid, and Corsola. It has a colorful physical move pool too, so it isn't limited by that. Just common sense shows that there isn't really any synergy here, and it really makes no sense to put this on Togekiss. I have a few honorable mentions to finish off the video, but if you made it this far, might as well hit the subscribe button. And what do we have today? Mountain Gale all over that like button. Who writes these? The first really only makes sense in the context of singles. This is Lightning Rod on ground types. The Marowak and Rhyperior lines both have Lightning Rod as an ability option. It does make sense with the original ability only functioning as a redirection option while not giving an immunity or boost to the user. While this is definitely good in doubles to redirect electric type moves, it's pretty useless in singles. Even with the buff to allow these mons to raise their special attack by 1 stage, it still does nothing for them as you're not using these mons to hit on the special side. Ever. Not even if you dared me to. I didn't want to include this in the normal portion of the video because it's actually Marowak's best ability in doubles, but in singles, having an immunity granting ability to a type you're already immune to doesn't really make any sense. The last mention for this video is going to be Merciless on Toxapex. Another signature ability, but I think it is only worth an honorable mention since Toxapex does have solid synergy to get this ability to work. Merciless is an offensive ability that guarantees critical hits against poison targets. A pretty cool and useful effect, but when you look at Toxapex's offenses, it doesn't synergize very well. You pretty much always want to be running a bulky regenerator set with its high defenses and reliable recovery. But Toxapex does have a myriad of options that gain the poison. Baneful Bunker, setting toxic spikes, or even just using the move Toxic itself. Plenty of options to get Merciless going. This also has synergy with Venoshock, which will now be a 130 base power stab attack with a guaranteed crit. So even though Toxapex isn't an offensive mon by design, I can't argue too much that they didn't at least try to give this mon the tools to use this ability somewhat decently. Are there any other abilities that have terrible synergy with their users? Not just bad abilities, but ones that can usually be good or decent, just placed on mons that don't mesh well. Let me know, buds. Special shout out to my supporters, including Patreon member Mr. Frank Beans. If you want to support the channel and get special perks like early ad-free video release, Discord perks, and more for very cheap, check out my links in the description. And if you liked the video, make sure to check this one out next. Thanks for watching, buds.